Lesson 33, the last chapter of the book. We are on our third lesson in the me verbs, and we are going to look at istimi and then some forms of ida and the optative mood. The vocabulary of lesson 33 is found on page 216. On istimi, I cause to rise, or I stand up, or I arise. Dokeo, I seem or think. Dyname, I am able. Dynamis, dynamios, a miracle or power. Evin is the second aorist of veno. Heteros, I own, another, which really is a different one from the word allos, refers to another of the same kind. Heteros refers to another of a different kind. We get our word heteros here, heterodoxy, one false doctrine or different doctrine. Istimi, I cause to stand, or I stand. Kathime, I sit. Ida, I know. A second perfect uses a present, and this second perfect you won't translate it perfect, you'll translate it present, but you'll recognize that it is a perfect. Olos, eon, whole or all. Homeos, I own, like or similar. Ute, and not, nor. And ute, neither nor. Parayiname, I come near, I arrive, I come. Phonorao, I make manifest, I manifest. Phemi, I say, or phemi, I say. And os as an adverb and a conjunction as or when. We've already seen this, os as a conjunction in 1 John. Then the principal parts of istimi are found in paragraph 539, and you see the breathing marks there. Look very carefully, you'll see that there is no, it's a rough breathing on the first part, that's present. On the aorist, it's smooth. On the perfect active and perfect middle, it's rough, and then on the aorist passive again, smooth. So watch that, it does change. The stem of istimi is sta, as we saw earlier, and the system is found on page 600. So let's look at that. What I failed to do last time was tell you about tithimi, and so we have the present of tithimi, paragraph or page 246, and on 247 we have the aorist. So the present on one side, aorist on the other, same way we had it with dithimi. And then with istimi, the one we're talking about now, you see that on page 248, the present system. On 249, the second aorist. Now, istimi also has a first aorist. That wouldn't be here because it isn't irregular. But steen is there, esteen, and that's on page 249. So learn those. You won't have to reproduce all of them, but you really ought to know where they are. You ought to know how they're formed. So spend some time in that chapter, or in those pages, learning those forms, tithimi, istimi. Of course, learn the principal parts for the quiz and for the exam. I just mentioned in paragraph 544 that istimi has a first aorist, estika, estisa, and then it also has that second aorist, estin. We have those there. We've already seen it. The paragraph 549, again, he talks about ida, being a second perfect uses the present, and he says that the conjugation is found on page 63, or paragraph 603. So I look there to find that. Then, in paragraph 550, we have the optative mood. Now, the optative is used to express a wish. It may also be used with a negative to express a negative wish. I don't want this to happen. God forbid, may it never come to pass. Mi yanito. So this is found in Paul very often. When Paul says, shall we sin that grace may abound? Then he says, God forbid, may it never come to pass. He uses it very often in Romans. The optative is also used in some other places, but very scarce in the New Testament. Conditions contrary to fact. Page 551. You'll find a full orbed discussion of this in Dana and Manti, page 286. We'll talk about Dana and Manti a little later. But this is a the condition contrary to fact is really a second-class condition. You see that it has secondary tenses in the indicative in both protasis and apodosis, and then the protasis has e, and the apodosis has on. Now, just a little word about that. You see the e with the indicative, on, plus the subjunctive, and let me drop that down. That's the third class. Plus the subjunctive. And then that's first class and third class. We've had these before. And then the second class is one we're just talking about here, e in the protasis and then on in the apodosis, and both having secondary tenses in the protasis and apodosis. So if we look at these together, you'll see that there are two kinds of conditions. The first and second class are fulfilled, and the third and fourth class are unfulfilled. Fulfilled, unfulfilled. Now, this one is assumed true. This one is assumed false. Assume true, assume false. If whatever, and I assume it is, assuming this to be true, assuming this to be false. So, talking about reality, talking about fulfilled. This one is future, unfulfilled yet. And we have another one, e with the optative, which you'll see in Danon Manti. And this one is a more probable. And this is only possible. In fact, it is remotely possible, e with the optative. So those are the conditions. You can check them out in Danon Manti or some other advanced grammar. In paragraph 552, we have the uses of yinome. It happened, it came into being, it came to pass, etc. Those are all there, all used in the New Testament in various ways. And then in paragraph 553, he mentions a yeneto and a yeneto that, and you see the illustrations there. It came to pass that he came, it came to pass and he came, it came to pass he came. Different constructions for that thought. Now in 1 John, we want to give 3 more verses to end up this section, to end up the course. And we have the first one here, verse 11 of chapter 2, 1 John. He says, the one who is hating his brother. We've seen this before, a participle acting as subject, noun use, substantive. But that is a subject of these 3 verbs, estin, paripati, and then atilopson. What he's saying then is the one who is hating his brother is in the darkness, and he is walking in darkness, and he does not know where he is going. A relative adverb, so a relative clause, as object of then, which is a form of ida, which we just talked about. Ida. He does not know where he is going, and then an oti clause as an adverb, telling why. He doesn't know where he's going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. Now, there's some question in my mind whether it's the oti clause modifies this verb or whether it modifies all 3 verbs. He may be walking in darkness because the darkness has blinded his eyes. If that's the case, then you would put the line over here and run it up to here. Then it is modifying all 3 verbs. My students go round and round on that with me, and it's really a matter of interpretation. And we don't go into that deeply at this juncture. Then verse 12, technia, vocative there. It's a nominative, uses a vocative. I write to you because the sins have been forgiven you through his name. Form of aphemi, have been forgiven you through his name. You can look in the back of Machen, you'll find that form and get it squared away. Oti clause again, used adverbially. Then the verse 13, fathers, I write to you, because you have known the one from the beginning. Whether they have known him physically may be debatable, but they have known him spiritually. They have known him from the beginning, the one who's from the beginning. And young men, I write to you, because you have overcome the evil one. The young men are overcomers. The little children, their sins have been forgiven. The fathers have known the one who's from the beginning. Very, very important to have all those in your church. And the Greek tells us all about this, tells us why and so forth. And we can see it very carefully by the diagram that we have there. Well, that's the lesson. That's Machen. I want to talk to you a little more, though, about what you can do next. And we'll come right back with that after this. Well, it's all over. You know what they call graduation? When you graduate from a college, they call it commencement. And rightly so. It isn't an ending, it's a commencement, a beginning of something. And that's what I look at this Greek as. You have now done something so you can now commence to really get into the Word. Are you going to continue to study on your own? I think you will. Because many people do put their Greek aside, but you won't do that. You didn't take Greek because you had to. You took Greek because you wanted to, because you went out of your way to get into the Greek. And I don't think you want to let it stop now. You may even be going on to another Bible college, or maybe you decided to go to seminary. That's why you took the Greek in the first place. Well, whatever you do, the study that you have is has prepared you for a real lifetime of study in the Word. Now, if you go to seminary, don't let the modern pronunciation bother you. I've just noted a couple of things in Machen. If you want to turn to the alphabet there in Machen on page 9, let me show you something. He only has 3 letters pronounced differently than we do. The vita, or beta, the delta, he calls delta, and then the epsilon, we call it E, he calls it upsilon, U. Those 3 letters, that's all we pronounce differently in the letters. Now in the diphthongs, we did do differently on those, and you can find out how he pronounces them on page 11, and that's the normal pronunciation. If you go to seminary, you may want to be familiar with those so you'll understand what other people are saying to you. I have it on good authority. Several of our young men have gone to seminary, and one in particular told me just recently that he had no problem understanding what they were saying. They had a little problem understanding him in his diphthongs. But you can look over here and you can pretty well see what they've done, and let that be your guide as you go on to further study somewhere else. But what I want to talk to you about here is, how do you go about doing it yourself? How do you keep at it? Even if you're going to seminary, you may have 2 or 3 months before you go. You ought to stay in the Word. And one of the things you're going to need is some tools. Now we have available through Video Bible Library a diskette that goes on the Apple II, which is a vocabulary review for Machen. You may find this helpful if you write, and I'm sure they'll tell you what it's all about. Then you ought to get yourself a few good books. First of all, you ought to have Arndt and Gingrich. You ought to have a good lexicon. We've talked about that before. Bauer's lexicon, translated by Arndt and Gingrich and brought up to date. There's a new one. Don't get the old variety. Get the new one. University of Chicago Press. Then there is Moulton and Geeden Lexicon. It's a lexicon that's based on the Greek text and has the Greek text in it. It doesn't have just a word in Greek and the rest in English. It's all in Greek, so that when you're reading it, you get a good Greek context. I recommend Moulton and Geeden as your concordance. Then there's a good set of word pictures, Robertson's word pictures, and these are very helpful in understanding. It's a 6-volume set. He goes through the whole New Testament, book by book, chapter by chapter, and gives you some really good insight on the grammar. So I recommend A.T. Robertson as well. Then probably your best tool at this point in the study is going to be Dana and Manti. Dana and Manti is an intermediate grammar. There are other grammars, but Dana and Manti has a really good grammar, and it will be good to go from what you know now to this particular grammar. Now I want to show you a couple of things that this grammar does so that you'll know what you're getting into. For instance, he goes farther than your introductory grammar. You'd expect that. I've turned here to the adverbial participle. Remember we talked about that, and we said a adverbial participle is temporal. It talks about the action of the verb in relation to the time of the main verb and so forth. Temporal. That's one use. Dana Mantey gives you, look, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 more uses, or 10 uses altogether for the participle. This will be tremendously helpful in your study. And I would say to you, use this to classify things, get down to a finer classification, and I'll tell you how to do that as we go over here to the flip chart. Study Dana Mantey. We're talking about getting into that book and really finding out what he says. Read it. You'll find it fascinating. I believe that one of the most fascinating things you'll do is to read Dana Mantey. Now, that sounds like, oh, here's a Greek teacher saying this is going to be fun. I think it is. You'll read some things in there and you say, oh yeah, that's what Machen meant when he said that. And then you'll find the details in Dana Mantey. Then, choose a small New Testament book. Take Philippians or Thessalonians or something like that, and do a detailed study. First of all, you'll want to do a translation. Now, what I'm telling you here is what we do in our 4th semester. We guide our students through this kind of thing. A good translation. Write out your own translation. Using a lexicon, using whatever helps you need, but get a good translation that you're comfortable with. Then diagram the book. What fun to diagram a whole book of the New Testament. And then, the third, you ought to classify all the words, phrases, and clauses. If it's in a clause, then look at Dana Mantey, see what in a clauses can do. If it's a temporal clause, what kind of a clause is it, and so forth. Do all of that with every word, phrase, and clause. Find out the various nuances and make a decision. You may not be right, but at least you've made a decision, and it will help you to learn not only the grammar, it'll help you learn that book, and it'll help you to learn the various classifications of things, and you'll probably begin to know a little bit about Dana Mantey, which is an excellent grammar. Then write a commentary. Well, how do you write a commentary? Well, you've done all the work. You've translated, you've diagrammed, you've done all the classification. Now sit down with either making your own outline, or maybe if that's a little bit hard for you, take someone else's outline. Get a good outline of the book. You'll find them in good commentaries, and then begin to write a commentary, and do so using some helps, using some commentaries. Someone said one time that when you're in a library, you're standing on the shoulders of those who have gone before you. That's what you want to do. Stand on the shoulders of these men. They've done some good work. You don't start with ground zero in anything anymore. So begin to use the helps. International Critical Commentary is a commentary that you would find much value in. They really get into the grammar. And now that you know Greek, you're able to use something like that. New Testament, or the New International Commentary, a very good commentary as well. More up to date, but I think probably not as grammatical as is the ICC. Then Hendrickson. Hendrickson lives down near us in Boca Raton. Really fine writer. He keeps on writing. I hope the Lord lets him live. He's about 85. Hope he lives to be 150. So he can keep on writing the great commentaries that he does. It'll be very helpful to find out what Hendrickson has done. He's only done maybe a third of the New Testament so far. But if he's done your book, get Hendrickson. Lenski has done the whole New Testament, and probably the most grammatical writer you'll find. So use Lenski as well. Nicole, Interpreter's Greek New Testament. Fine commentary on the Greek New Testament. And then maybe a little less expensive, the Tyndale series. These are excellent books. They have them in paperback. You can get them for maybe $50, $60 for the whole New Testament, and that's a bargain. There are many others, so don't take these as the only list, but use others and get into your commentary. Make your own commentary. And then remember that you're doing this not for yourself alone, you're doing it for others. Don't let your Greek die. Keep digging and sharing with other people. Help other people to learn it. Get other people into the Greek. Tell them about how you learn. Pass along your tape, or bring some people over from your church into your house on a Monday night and say, let's study Greek every Monday night, and you teach them. You'd be surprised how much you'll learn by doing that. But really, what we're after is, let that word get inside of you. Don't put the Greek aside and say, well, I'm going to get it, it's academic, I know this, and then lay all that you know on people. Let that word get inside of you and begin to change you. Because remember, Paul says we are to let that word make us something different, to change us. Let us be what the Lord wants us to be. Don't make it just an academic exercise. If it is that, then I would prefer you not even have started. And certainly, don't let this thing pass off on someone else. Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 18 that we're changed from glory to glory by the mirror of the Word. Never miss that idea. Getting into the Word, let that Word change you, and then the reason for which God has saved you will come about, and that is that you be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ. God bless you as you do it.